She grabbed my wrist before I could even step off the porch, and the look on her face stopped me cold. "Don't go in yet," my daughter-in-law's mother whispered. Her name was Lucinda, and I had never once seen that woman look afraid of anything. She was the kind of person who could return a steak at a restaurant without blinking. But standing there on my son's front steps at 7:15 in the morning, she looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. "What on earth?" "Shh." She pulled me sideways behind the hydrangea bush that my late husband Everard had planted 12 years ago. "Just stay here, please. I want to be honest with you." My first thought was that she had lost her mind. It was the morning of my son Prescott's wedding, my only son. The day I had dreamed about since the afternoon 32 years ago, when the doctor set this tiny red-faced boy in my arms, and I thought, someday someone is going to love you the way you deserve. I was supposed to be inside helping him straighten his tie. I was supposed to be crying happy tears and taking too many photographs. Instead, I was crouching behind a hydrangea bush in my good dress with a woman I barely trusted whispering, "shh," at me like I was a child. My husband had been gone for 4 years by then. 4 years, and I still woke up some mornings reaching for his side of the bed before I remembered. I kept thinking he should have been there to see this day. He would have slapped Prescott on the back too hard and told an embarrassing story from when Prescott was 12, and Prescott would have rolled his eyes but loved every second of it. That was the thing about grief that nobody warned you about. It didn't just hurt at the big moments. It reached into the small ones too, the quiet, ordinary ones, the ones where you turned to say something to someone and they simply weren't there anymore. "Lucinda," I said her name as firmly as I could in a whisper, "tell me what is happening right now." She pressed her lips together. "It's Gwendolyn," she said. "Gwendolyn. My future daughter-in-law, the woman Prescott had been engaged to for 14 months. The woman I had genuinely tried to love. I should say something about Gwendolyn, because otherwise none of this will make sense. She was beautiful in that polished, deliberate way that makes you feel slightly underdressed in your own kitchen. Prescott had met her at a conference in Atlanta. He works in commercial real estate. She had told us she was in financial consulting, and he had come home talking about her like a man who had been struck by lightning. I had never seen my son like that. He was always so measured, so careful. His father used to joke that Prescott had come out of the womb already reading the fine print, so seeing him undone by this woman was something. I wanted to love her for that alone, but there was something, I cannot explain it better than that, something that sat just below the surface when she was in the room. She was warm with Prescott and perfectly polite to me, and she always said the right thing at the right moment, and that was almost the problem. No one says exactly the right thing every single time unless they are working very hard at it. I mentioned this once to my sister, who told me I was jealous and projecting. Maybe I was willing to consider the possibility. Maybe I was just a mother who didn't want to let her son go. But I kept noticing things, small things. The way she changed the subject whenever her family came up. How she'd told Prescott her father was dead, and then one afternoon I overheard a phone call, just a fragment. I wasn't listening on purpose, and she said, "I can't talk to you right now," in a voice that was so cold and so familiar it didn't sound like someone speaking to a stranger. I didn't say anything. What would I say? I had fragments, feelings, a mother's unease that could very easily be explained as jealousy. So I kept quiet and told myself that this was Prescott's choice to make, not mine, until Lucinda grabbed my wrist on the porch. "What about Gwendolyn?" I said. Lucinda closed her eyes for a moment, like she was trying to figure out where to start. "I got a call last night," she said. "From a woman I don't know. She said she'd found my number through, it doesn't matter. She said she needed to speak to the mother of the groom." "Why would she call you?" "Because she couldn't find you. She looked online, she found me instead. I'm in the county directory. My late husband listed us both." She exhaled. "She said she was calling from Spokane, Washington." I didn't know what to say to that. "She said she has a son 8 years old." Lucinda's voice had dropped even lower. "She said the boy's father has been paying child support for 6 years and his name on the support order is Callaway Marsh." I stared at her. "That's not Prescott's name," I said slowly. "No, but the address on the court documents is a mailbox in Decatur, Georgia, and the phone number listed for the father is a number I recognized." She looked at me. "It's Gwendolyn's cell phone." The world went very quiet. "She's been paying the child support," I said. It wasn't really a question, apparently for years. "The woman in Spokane, she said she met a man online 6 years ago. He disappeared before the baby was born. She tracked him through the courts and eventually got a support order, but she never met him in person. She just got checks from this account under the name Callaway Marsh. She said she only started digging recently because the checks started bouncing." I sat with that for a moment. Paying another woman's child support under a man's name, a name that wasn't real. Why would she? "I don't know," Lucinda said. But when I told my daughter last night, you told Gwendolyn? No. She shook her head. I told Serena, my other daughter. She was up half the night on her laptop and she found something else. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, not printed, handwritten in neat small letters. Callaway Marsh has a driver's license in Oklahoma. It was issued 8 years ago. Serena found a property record. The address on the license matches an apartment complex in Tulsa. That doesn't mean. The license photo, Lucinda said, is Gwendolyn. I felt the porch railing under my hand before I realized I had reached for it. A man's identity, presumably to get out of something, or to hide from someone, or both. Lucinda looked at me with those tired eyes. Serena thinks she used it to open bank accounts. Maybe more. Inside the house, I could hear movement, music. Someone had put on a playlist, something soft and instrumental. The day was going on around us, not knowing. Prescott was in there. My son was in there putting on his suit, thinking about the rest of his life. I will be honest with you about what I felt in that moment because I think you deserve the truth and not the cleaned-up version. I was terrified. Not angry, not yet. Terrified. Because I knew what came next. I knew that whatever I did in the next 2 hours would define my relationship with my son for the rest of our lives. If I stopped this wedding and I was wrong, if this turned out to be some terrible misunderstanding, he would never forgive me. Not entirely. There would always be a scar. The morning his mother had dragged him away from the woman he loved. And if I said nothing, and I let him marry her, I thought about my husband again. I thought about what he would have said. He was a quiet man, methodical, the kind of person who thought things through from every angle before he moved. But when he did move, he didn't hesitate. He always told me, when you know, you act. Doubt is for before the decision. Once you know, you don't stand around waiting for a better moment. I knew. I didn't have everything. I didn't have an explanation, but I had a fake identity on a court document. I had a woman in Spokane with a child and a bounced check, and I had 4 years of something is wrong sitting in my chest, like a stone, and I was done calling it jealousy. I need you to keep her upstairs, I said to Lucinda. She blinked. What? Gwendolyn's getting her hair done at the salon 2 streets over, isn't she? The appointment is at 9? Yes, but she has bridesmaids with her. She's going to be gone at least 2 hours. I need those 2 hours. I straightened up. I'm going to talk to my son. Getting Prescott alone was easier than I expected. His groomsmen were downstairs eating breakfast someone had catered, and I caught him in the upstairs hallway, still in his undershirt with his jacket over his arm, squinting at a cufflink like it had personally wronged him. He looked up, exact smile he'd had since he was 4 years old, and I almost lost my nerve. Mom, these things are impossible. How did Dad always? Sit down with me, I said. Please. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And because he is my son and he has known me for 39 years, the smile went away. What happened? Not a question. He said it the way his father used to say it. We sat on the top step of the staircase, the two of us, like we used to when he was small and couldn't sleep, and we'd sit there listening to the house settle. I told him everything Lucinda had told me. I didn't soften it, and I didn't rush it, and I didn't cry, though I wanted to. I watched his face go through 7 different things in 4 minutes. When I finished, there was a long silence. That can't be right, he said finally. I know that's the first thing you'd say. I know, and I could be wrong. But we have a name. We have a driver's license photo, and we have a woman in Spokane who has been receiving money from Gwendolyn's phone number for 6 years. He stood up, sat back down, ran his hand over his face. Why would she? I don't know. But I need you to ask her. He looked at me. It's our wedding day. I know. The guests start arriving at 11. I know, sweetheart. He was quiet for a long time. I watched him think, really think, that careful, methodical way he got from his father. And I waited. Okay, he said at last. Show me the paper. I won't describe all of it. Some of it belongs to Prescott alone. What I will tell you is that he'd some calls. He had a friend from college who worked in financial crimes, and he called that man at 8:15 on a Saturday morning and kept him on the phone for 20 minutes. By the time Gwendolyn got back from the salon, her hair pinned up in a way that must have taken an hour, there were 2 other people in the living room waiting for her that she hadn't expected. One was Prescott. One was a woman named Detective Faye Arnstes, who worked white-collar crimes for the county, and who had been very interested in the name Callaway Marsh when Prescott's friend had made a quiet inquiry. I wasn't in the room. I was in the kitchen with Lucinda, who had made coffee neither of us was drinking. I could hear voices, not words, just tones, and then I heard Gwendolyn's voice go up, that controlled surface cracking for the first time in 14 months, and then it went quiet. It was a very long quiet. When Prescott came into the kitchen, he looked like someone had aged him. Not old, just different, like something had settled in him permanently. She had a partner, he said, sitting down heavily. The man in Spokane was real. They worked together, some kind of identity scheme, financial fraud. When it went bad, she took everything and ran. She built the fake identity to protect the assets she'd kept. She was using me. He stopped, swallowed. She was using my name too, my credit, the accounts I'd set up for after the wedding. He put his face in his hands. I wanted so badly to say something perfect, some other thing that would fix it or at least contain it. But there is no perfect thing to say when your child's world collapses. So I put my hand on his back, between his shoulder blades, the way I had when he was small and sick, and I left it there. After a while, he took a long, slow breath. "The guests," he said. "Your cousin Evermond is here," I said. "He can make an announcement. We'll keep it simple. Family emergency, the wedding is postponed. People will understand, they'll have questions. They always do. You don't have to answer them today." He looked at me. He had his father's eyes, that particular shade of dark gray that I had loved for 35 years and then had to learn to live without. "How did you know?" he asked. "You always. I could tell you never trusted her, but you never said anything. How long did you know something was wrong?" I thought about it honestly. "I didn't know," I said. "I suspected there's a difference. I wasn't sure enough to say anything and risk being wrong." I paused. "But Lucinda made a call last, sure enough." He nodded, slowly. "I should have listened to my gut." "Your gut was full of love. That's not a failure." He was quiet for a while. "Did you ever feel like that?" he asked. "About Dad, like you knew something was wrong and almost talked yourself out of it?" I thought about it. "Once," I said. "Early on, there was a woman at his office I didn't like. I spent 3 months deciding whether I was paranoid." I shook my head. Turned out to be nothing. She was just his work friend and I was being insecure. So sometimes the gut is wrong. Sometimes. But you still have to listen to it. You gather what you know and you don't act until you know enough, and you stay as kind as you can while you're figuring it out. I looked at him. "That's the best any of us can do." Detective Arnstad called me 2 weeks later with an update. Gwendolyn, whose real name it turned out was something else entirely, a name I won't repeat here because it belongs to a person she'd been running from for a long time, and that story is more complicated than I can do justice to, had been charged with wire fraud and identity theft. The man from Spokane had been located. The woman and the 8-year-old child were cooperating with investigators and were not expected to face charges. Prescott took a month off work. He went to stay with his college roommate in Asheville and came back quieter, but I thought more solid, like something had been stripped away, and what was underneath was stronger. He called me one evening in February when the light was going early and I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea and the radio on low. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said, about gathering what you know before you act. I think I spent 14 months not gathering," he said. "I think I kept running into things that didn't add up and I would decide I was overthinking and I'd move on." "You were in love." "I was avoiding," he said quietly. "There's a difference." I didn't say anything for a moment. "You know what your father would have said," I told him. "What?" "He would have said you learned something that a lot of people never learn, that you can love someone completely and still need to see them clearly, that those two things aren't opposites." I paused. He was pretty smart for a man who couldn't work a cufflink. Prescott laughed. It was the first time I had heard him really laugh in months, and it moved through me like something physical, warm and sharp at the same time. The way relief always feels when you've been frightened for a long time. The hydrangea Everard planted was already putting out new growth. I had noticed that morning. Even in February, those stubborn first shoots were showing. He always did love a plant that came back. Outside my kitchen window, the streetlights were coming on one by one, and I sat there with my tea going cold and thought about how much life there still was left to live for me and for my son, and how none of it would be simple and how that was all right. How that was in fact exactly all right.